morning, Lagos. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, the world. Wherever you're watching us from, welcome to the perfect morning start on television. It's the morning brief on Channels Television. I am Bukola Koka, and it's Triumph Thursday. So the harder the struggle, the greater the glory. So keep it on, and you'll soon get to the finish line. Of course, it's a two-man or one-man, one-woman show this morning. Hi, Jeffrey.
Hi, Bukola. Welcome to the program. And of course, it's Thursday edition of the program. Today is what, 25th or 24th?
25th. Don't worry, Jeffrey.
I'm trying to check the date. No, it's not that. I just try to help the people mark time and all of that. So, how have you been?
Blessed as always. So, Jeffrey, for today, as we start off, one of the things highest on my mind is the buzzword protest, nationwide protest. And, you know, there's been a back and forth, particularly in the past week, about the protest, the constitutionality of the protest and the propriety of the protest. It appears as if, you know, pundits are on both sides of the divide as far as this nationwide protest is concerned. And, you know, for those who are arguing about the constitutionality of the protest, they are right, really, you know, having provision within the Constitution, the right to expression, the right to lawful assembly, you know, which shouldn't be trampled upon or stifled in any way. And those who are arguing about the propriety of the protest, you know, have their concerns anchored in the NSAS, #NSAS experience, which went awry. And of course, every Nigerian knows what happened. It was a protest that began, you know, on a peaceful note. And in fact, had its roots in years before that time, as, you know, over the 2 years before that time, youths had begun to protest, gather in small, you know, places and in bits and pieces against the brutality of the police, you know, and people say that those who died during the NSAS protests, you know, should give cause for concern, and parents should not encourage their youths to come out. But the truth of the matter is, if because of the NSAS experience, you know, Nigerians decide not to protest ever again, it would be fine, you know, but would we be honoring the memory of those who came out and sacrificed their lives, particularly because the issues remain, you know, corruption, security concerns, and in fact, the economic indicators in this administration that are at an all-time high. So the issues for protest are valid. And in fact, you know, protests are very important in a democracy because, you know, they give minority a voice. Of course, they also alter the agenda, and they keep the debate alive, and they give minority voices, you know, a sense of belonging. So are protests constitutional? Absolutely. Do we win sometimes? Maybe not. But do we win sometimes? Yes, we do. And we can, in fact, cite, you know, an experience that is very close to us in time and in location. Kenya, although that came at a great cost, it was a Pyrrhic one, but the president withdrew the bill. And in fact, he has appointed a cabinet right now that has some opposition members in it. We can go further down in history, you know, to also cite other cases, the 1990 experience in the United Kingdom, where the government introduced a community charge known as the poll tax. And, you know, that elicited protests. And it was obvious that, you know, the people were not going to pay, and that tax was abolished. Should we stifle the voices, the right of the people to protest? Absolutely no. Should we cower in fear in the face of great challenges? Absolutely no. But we also know that, you know, some people work under pressure, and their creative abilities and capacities are tested under pressure. So we appeal to this government to see this as a challenge, to test their creative abilities and capacities and do right by the people, and not in any way, you know, stifle the voices of dissent, either covertly or, you know, evidently using security agents. You know, I wonder if you think differently about these issues, Jeffrey.
Well, everybody has their say. So the government is a bit conflicted. I put out a post yesterday. They are a bit conflicted as to how to manage all of this. The Constitution provides and protects people when it comes to protest, Section 40 and other sections as well. But the government is also concerned about national security. But where the government has to be careful whether flying the wall or implicitly or indirectly threatening people, like we've seen in the past. There's this much you can say to people to stop protesting. At some point, it's no longer going to work, because every time people want to come out to protest, government is screaming, it may go the other way, it may end like NSAS and all of that. At some point, people will no longer be able to listen to all of that. But the key word here is peaceful. For the people who are protesting, first, there has to be an agenda, a clear goal as to how you want to, what you want to achieve. So in Kenya, for instance, they wanted the finance bill dropped. They wanted prudence and in government. You know, that's why the man had to dissolve all his cabinet and bring a new set of people to help him serve the country. So there has to be that clarity by the protesters as to what is the end game, so that it's not going to be misinterpreted as a call for anarchy at the end of the day. And on the side of the government has to take responsibility to protect our citizens, not to threaten them. And the discordant tone I hear from government is quite heartbreaking. On one hand, I like what is coming out from the Minister of Information, relaying the president's concern, saying, look, give me some time, don't go out to protest, it's an appeal. On the other hand, Bayo Nanuga is almost going up in arms, calling names and all of that. So there has to be coordination in this government. What exactly are you saying? Should we be listening to Bayo Nanuga, or should we be listening to the president via the Minister of Information? Get your acts together. Let's be clear on what the presidency is saying. Nobody wants anarchy. We saw what happened with NSAS. It was hijacked by hoodlums. The NSAS protesters did not come to destroy anybody's anything, but it's eventually hijacked by hoodlums. Some people are accusing the government of being responsible for these hoodlums and all of that. So everybody has a say, but at the end of the day, I think I like what some people are suggesting. The president doesn't need to use proxy at this point. If you can identify the protesters, it is not time to intimidate anybody, because that's not going to work anymore. Call them to the table, just like we've called labor. What do you want? What can we do? Can you give me more time? I mean, not proxy, straight up talk to the people if they can be identified at the end of the day. But that's just us just expressing our own, 2 cents as far as this protest is concerned. Everybody's right between protecting peaceful protesters and the issue of national security. We don't want to protest and our country burns. We don't also want to suffer and die with quote and unquote the responsibility of government. So there has to be a balance. Bukola, what do we have?
Indeed, there must be a balance, and we have quite a lot today. We're still, looking at the vibrance of democracy, which will be what we describe as the bastion, the legislative arm of government. It plays a pivotal role for any government in the world, as it is that arm of government that presents the checks and balances and holds the executive accountable through its oversight functions. And today we'll delve into that space to see how effective, parliamentary functions, that is specifically oversight, have engendered accountability in ministries, the departments and agencies, or has it reduced accountability? So we'll find out this morning on the program.
Well, that will not be all we will be talking about today. According to Data Reporter, there are about 103.0 million internet users in Nigeria as at the start of 2024. And out of that number, 36.75 million were active social media users in January 2024, equating 16.2% of the total population. A good measure of this, 36.75 million are often engrossed in virtual worlds, spending invaluable, productive time on skits, games, and jest. Today, we open up on the conversation on the causes and effects of excessive screen time, particularly for our mental health.
And we're all guilty of that, Jeffrey.
We're all guilty. We're in this WhatsApp group. We're all in this WhatsApp group.
Yes, in this WhatsApp group that has Instagram, Facebook, TikTok.
I love TikTok.
Twitter.
Yeah.
Sorry, X. So how do we curb social media addiction? We're going to have that conversation today. Also, after all the formal conversation this morning, we relax with some medicine for the soul as we explore the comedy genre. We'll be catching up with stand-up comedian, comic actor, and Afrobeat gospel musician Olufemi Ademola Fagade, but you know him as Omobaba.
Omobaba #1. Great guy. So we're going to be chatting with him towards the end of the show. It's going to be fun. So let's just have a great time together on the program. Is the very, 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 very best of it right here.
Yes, indeed. Don't forget that you can post to us on X, on Facebook, on Instagram. You can share your comments. You are a very integral part of this show. So start typing already. What are your thoughts on the nationwide protest? Of course, we've got you covered. We'll be reviewing your reactions to that and other big stories. Speaking of which, that will begin unfolding after this time out. Of course, our Hand of Fellowship is showing on your screen right now as well. You can share your videos and we'll authenticate and help amplify your voices. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Now, the planned nationwide protest was the phrase on the lips of many, as well as a major cause of concern for government officials, starting in the FCT, where the federal government appealed for more time as it is making efforts to address the current economic challenges. The Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mr. Mohammed Idris, who made the remark after a closed-door meeting between ministers and the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, urged Nigerians to shelve the plot of the planned protest.
There's no need for any protest. Let us all calm down. A lot is happening. Nigeria is going to move and march on. And we believe that whatever government comes up will be in the interest of Nigeria. We don't think that there is need for any protest. We are appealing for calm. We are appealing for a peaceful resolution or peaceful approach to any issue.
In the meantime, the Minority Caucus of the House of Representatives is urging the federal government to open a channel of dialogue with those planning to organize a protest against the cost of living in the country. And this was part of the caucus resolution at the end of the session on Thursday in Abuja. The minority leader of the House, Honorable Kingsley Chinda, who spoke with journalists, stated this while appealing against the protest against the backdrop of security concerns in the country. And the chairman of the Progressive Governors Forum, Governor Hope Uzodimma of Imo State, has advised against the planned protests by some Nigerians, saying it is wrong timing to embark on such. Speaking with State House correspondents after meeting with President Bola Tinubu, where he was accompanied by Governor Francis Nwifuru of Ebonyi State, during which they went to formally present the former president of the Senate, Senator Pius Ayim, to the president. Senator Ayim had recently joined the All Progressives Congress.
I think it is a wrong time for anybody to do any protest, because the implication of doing that, if care is not taken, is that it may be hijacked, like the NASS experience, where criminals now hijacked and innocently conceived agitation by young Nigerians. So this is another kind of temptation that I think, too, that those behind the protest, because they have not been able to come out openly to say they are behind it, there is something that is a motive that is yet to be unraveled. So I think that we are not in support of the protest. We are not going to support any protest that has no programs, that is not discussed, that nobody knows what the problems are. Okay, if you are protesting, what do you want government to do? Because the reason for protest is that they want an issue to be addressed. What are the issues? So in my view, I think there's no need to overheat the polity, overheat our environment, and put our people in a position that the hardship that is occasioned by economic recession all over the world is further worsened. So I advise against the protest. And the people of Southeast, particularly the leadership and the Southeast Governors Forum, which I'm the chairman, we're indeed very grateful. We're very happy with that. It means that the neglect we've been crying for a very long time is being addressed now by the national government. So we owe this glory to Almighty God and to Mr. President for being able to do this justice to our people.
And still on the planned protest, the National Association of Nigerian Students, NANS, has threatened to take to the streets over the high cost of living in the country. The president of the Senate of the association, who spoke with newsmen at the Aminu Kano College of Islamic Studies, laments the high cost of fuel, fees, and food items. According to him, the situation is difficult for ordinary students, and they're asking the government to reverse the policies that have caused this hardship. Now, the planned protest has also caught the attention of the traditional institutions, as His Royal Majesty Omobaba Nedo Ukwakolopolo Ewaye II, the Oba of Benin, has appealed to the federal government to intensify efforts in the implementation of its economic and security policies. This appeal is contained in a palace public announcement set to be issued on the authority of the Oba of Benin by the Chief Press Secretary to the Oba, Osaigbovo Iguabaro. The Omobaba, in the message, also appealed to members of the public to give the federal government more time to implement its economic policy designed to alleviate the current economic hardship. And the Minister of State for Youth Development, Mr. Ayodele Olawande, is also lending his voice to the planned protest by appealing to young Nigerians to shelve the idea and instead engage the process of governance. Mr. Olawande made the plea during a youth-focused dialogue on anti-corruption organized by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime in Abuja. And the National Working Committee of the Labour Party is accusing the Nigeria Labour Congress and some federal lawmakers elected on the party's platform of fueling crisis in the party with the sole objective of demarketing Mr. Peter Obi ahead of 2027. The Labour Party's national legal advisor, Mr. Kehinde Edun, told journalists at a news conference in Abuja that the NLC and some of the elected lawmakers on the Labour Party's platform are on the payroll of some politicians and they've been employed to destroy the party.
The attempt by the NLC to hijack the party is unconstitutional and illegal. The Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has clearly spelled out how a political party can operate and how it can be formed. Section 221 to 22 now clearly said it. And the job for which the NLC and its cronies have been paid is to create a semblance of crisis, a semblance of division in the party. They are on the payroll of our political opponents to demarket our party. When a party is growing, you have all sorts of people. Some of the people elected on our platform are not genuine progressive. They are not genuine people who believe the ideology of the party. They only came because they failed in other places. Now they want to defect, and they think that the only way they can do that is to create a semblance, to make it appear as if there is a faction. So they have found a willing tool in the NLC.
And now to security. The Akwa Ibom State Police Command says it has uncovered an armory hidden in a private mortuary by a notorious kidnapping syndicate at Ekeya, Okobo local government area. The State Police Commissioner, Mr. Wahid Ayilara, disclosed this and other interventions of the command in its fight against criminal elements in the state, while parading over 30 suspected criminals arrested for several offenses at the state command headquarters in Ikorakpan, Abia.
We have adopted new strategies in fighting evolving crimes and criminality in order to ensure that Akwa Ibom State is stable and remain one of the most peaceful states in the country. Our adopted strategies have yielded positive results, and below are some of our operational breakthroughs. The first one I want to showcase for you is the arrest of suspected kidnapper and recovery of firearms. Based on intelligence and diligent investigation, as many of you have known here, we have issues of kidnapping at Oro Nation Axis. And one of our wanted kidnappers there is one Obong Effiong ashibong, otherwise known as condiment. Yes, we had information about him and his armory, which we diligently followed through. And in the process, we were able to recover 2 AK-47 rifles, 2 G3 rifle, 1 double-barrel rifle, 1 single-barrel rifle, 5 magazines, and 7 live ammunitions.
And now to the economy. The Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, MAN, has cautioned the federal government against demarketing local industry. The association also called for caution from major actors, government agencies and regulators in the oil and gas sector of the economy regarding the federal government Dangote refinery saga. The Director General of MAN, Mr. Segun Ajayi Kadiri, said government agencies that provide regulatory oversight functions should promote an enabling and business environment for local industries to thrive. He said no regulatory agency should cast a shadow over a homegrown investment like the Dangote refinery. And outside our shores, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris has gone on the offensive against Donald Trump in the first rally of her White House campaign, portraying November's election as a choice between a former prosecutor and a convicted felon. Speaking to a crowd of about 3,000 in the battleground state of Wisconsin, Ms. Harris likened her Republican opponent to fraudsters she said she had prosecuted. Trump, meanwhile, assailed her record on the border and posted on social media, "Lynn Kamala Harris destroys everything she touches." It comes a day after she secured the support of a majority of Democratic delegates, paving the way for her to become the party's nominee. On Sunday afternoon, President Joe Biden announced he was withdrawing from the race and endorsed his vice president amid mounting pressures from top Democrats and donors following his disastrous debate against Trump in late June. And in sports, top-ranked tennis player Jannik Sinner pulled out of the Paris Olympics on Wednesday because of tonsillitis, meaning Novak Djokovic and Carlos Alcaraz will be the top-seeded men, setting up a potential gold medal rematch of the Wimbledon final. Sinner, a 22-year-old from Italy, posted on social media that a doctor advised him that he should sit out the Summer Games. Sinner won the Australian Open in January for his first Grand Slam title and moved up to #1 in the ATP rankings last month after reaching the French Open semi-finals. The draw for Olympic tennis is Thursday. Matches begin on Saturday. Missing the Olympics is a big disappointment, given that it was one of my main goals this season, Sinner wrote in Italian. I couldn't wait to have the honor of representing my country in this extremely important event. Sinner will be replaced on Italy's team by 207th-ranked Andrea Vavasori in singles and by Luciano Daderi in doubles alongside Lorenzo Musetti. What a disappointment for Sinner there, but there are always opportunities in the future, and we wish him quick recovery. So what are some of your thoughts to these big stories? Let's begin reviewing them right away as Jeffrey joins me now. Hello again, Jeffrey.
Absolutely. The big one, of course, is what is going on in our country as far as the politics is concerned. Calls for, shun the protest, let us protest, protect the protesters, and all of that. But one of the things I've also noticed is the fact that I know the president at some point had called some governors out. Do you know there are some governors that we can refer to as Abuja resident governors? That's a conversation we need to have one day. They never stay in their state. I mean, some governors in the south and some governors in the north, they are literally living in Abuja.
In Abuja, operating from Abuja.
I know the president called them out one day, and maybe one day when we get the real facts, we'll call them out as well. The Minister of Information, let's begin from where he's pleading for time and engaging stakeholders. For everyone who is one of the leaders or part of the movement, the government is saying, give the president more time. According to the Minister of Information, OK Stan says, when hunger has finished everyone, how long time can they give you But to buy aircraft is nothing to you. Building office for VP is nothing. And to award a humongous contract of 16 trillion naira until we all buy, that means die. Give you time to give you time. Okay, just repeated that.
Okay, and this next one is by Namdi Daniel, who says the only voice Nigerians need is to return the old fuel price, then everything will come back to normal. Well,
all right.
We'll go to the next talking point, which is we're not in support of nationwide protests, says Uzodimma.
Who is we now? The progressive governors, or where exactly is the we in here?
Well,
I guess, I think the progressive
maybe
governors...
the progressive governors and the Southeast, because we're speaking on the strength of the signing of the Southeast Commission Bill into law by Mr. President. Yesterday.
Oshun Fesson says, how could the immediate beneficiary of government support the protest?
And this next one is quite humorous, and it's from Ikene Ani, who says, how will you be in support when you're one of the people we are protesting against?
I know, remember those jobs he promised when he was campaigning?
Yeah.
Okay, we can't withdraw from protests within the organized. That's the NLC. So there's a lot that has to do with the protest. So Imafidon Joseph says, though the Nigerian Labour Congress is not organizing the protest, but my question is, are they in support of the protest? That's the question.
Well, that's exactly what the issue is. So saying we cannot withdraw from a protest within organizers, just a smart way of not identifying with the protest. Nigerians demand more accountability. This next one is from Awe, who says, nobody organized any protest. This one, people will just come out from different directions.
Yeah, because I know that the NLC president has made a release one time saying, look, the people have a right to protest. Don't intimidate the people. Even if it's political, they have a right to protest. That's I know he made a statement like that.
But will the NLC and the TUC and affiliate unions identify with this protest to show solidarity with Nigerians because of these issues?
I don't know. They will be able to answer. The President Tinubu has ordered the approval of a 150,000 naira grant for each business owner in Jigawa. That's what we say, according to what we see on social media. Dami Link said, why is this man keep wasting money up and down? This is not how to improve the economy, for God's sake. So,
well, Pius Chibuzo says...
I missed that news.
Yeah, let's do this very quickly. Pius Chibuzo says, all these are like wasting of money. 150K can't sustain businessmen in this hardship economy. Transport alone will eat up everything at once. Oga, bring down fuel pump price to 120 naira per litre, then solve insecurity problems and open border will be fine and everyone will be happy.
This is credited to the Senate President saying if you're a tailor and you employ additional hands, you can't pay the person below 70,000. If you hire a driver, a gateman, you cannot pay them below 70,000. Senate President explains the new minimum wage. I haven't seen the new provision, the amended provision of that minimum wage, so I may not be able to speak exactly to what it is, but the standard is 25 workers and all of that. So whether that has been amended, we don't know. Sean Awofodu Johnson says a lot of businesses will actually go down because of this. So we need to be clear on the provision. We're not wrong with what you said.
Of the minimum wage bill.
Yes.
This next one is by Daniel Rea, who says, how much are startup businesses and SMEs earning that they should be paying their staff 70K? Again, so if a government worker is earning 70K, then decides to employ a nanny, they should give their employee their whole salary. Well, I won't join that. Casting aspersions on
there has to be clarity. I think it may not be as exactly as stated because not every employer is expected to pay this if you have a house help and all of that. I don't know. But we're going to clear that when we see the provision of the minimum wage.
And in fact, if you check the implications of the consequential adjustment for civil servants on different cadres, it's just a minimum increment that they have gotten. So with that, will they be able to afford 70,000 naira for their own domestic workers? I think the legislators should look deeply into that before reaching those conclusions.
V_Nibe says, AI will do all my jobs, and it has been doing it perfectly. So make an arrest. Do we have more time?
I doubt that we have more time. We'll take a break now, and when we return, we'll keep our eyes still on the legislators and how well they're playing their role of checks and balances in this democracy. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Morning Brief. And as we start off now, we're looking at the role of legislators in a democracy, particularly that all-important oversight function. They're supposed to engender and ensure accountability and transparency in ministries, departments, and agencies of government. But how well are they doing that? And in fact, who regulates the regulator of ministries, departments, and agencies? Let's have that conversation together this morning. And we have joining us Mr. Chibuzo Okereke. He's a legislative governance expert and policy analyst. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Good morning and welcome, Mr. Okereke.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now, quite a lot has, as we start off now, quite a lot has been said about, this 10th session of the National Assembly, both in their disposition towards the executive. In fact, some have concluded, and not a few now, that perhaps they're just a mere appendage of the executive arm of government. But let's get your view now. In your own assessment, what do you perceive in the character and disposition of the legislators, particularly towards their oversight functions of the executive arm of government?
Well, first, I have to say that there seems to be a dearth of knowledge about legislative practices and procedure, not just in Nigeria, in most part of the world. And if you look at Nigeria, the legislature is the youngest arm of government when you consider the long years of ministry, incursion in our governance process. But looking at the 10th National Assembly, yes, the perception of the legislators as regards their roles and responsibilities, or even how they respond to executive proposals has been low, and these account for a number of reasons. First of all, in the legislature, you do not just deny proposals from the executive for the sake of that. Rather, when proposals are made under the Constitution and the rule book of the National Assembly, they are expected to present it and then have a robust debate. So the question most citizens have is this issue of how well policy proposals interrogated before they are given green light, for passage. But in terms of oversight, a number of issues account for the challenges we have in the oversight governance of the legislature. First is the issue of the philosophy of the oversight and the perception of oversight. If you look at the people from the executive arm, one of the rules of the National Assembly that they hate is that of oversight. The character of the executive arm is that nobody wants to be called to account, nobody wants to be held to account. And then also in terms of resource competence as to the approach to the oversight is also what needs to be addressed within the National Assembly. Oversight is not just meant to probably denigrate or show that, how somebody is not doing his or her job well. No, but to improve quality of governance, to enhance accountability, transparency, and value for money in the dispense of government expenditure, administration of policies, programs, and projects. So the 10th National Assembly, as you may well know, in the Senate, there are over 74 committees. In the House of Rep, you have over 130-something committees that are supposed to be dedicated. Then the principal act of most of the agencies of government had provided on how they should be regularly accountable to the legislature. Unfortunately, this is not happening, and that is why most of us call for the observance of our laws in a very religious and judicious manner, so that we can enhance that compliance mechanism. For instance, when you make appropriations in the Appropriation Act, the agencies intermittently supposed to send in reports and brief the legislature on how those policies are being implemented, because this is central. The legislature, as a deliberative arm of government, is key to carrying citizens along to show the evidence of how public expenditure is being managed. And where an individual or a government parastatal is not getting it right, under Section 88 and 89 of the Constitution, and the Legislative House's Privileges and Powers and Privileges Act, you are to bring that individual to order and then make recommendation on how disciplinary action will be taken. And that also accounts for the weakness we have in the oversight governance system, because one, after the legislature had finished their job, and they had to also send it back to the executive to implement. And in most cases, we have not gotten the leadership political will to deal with the recommendations of the legislature. At other times, the legislature is also considering a lot of political variables in making recommendations, and I think that is what needs to change. Yeah.
Mr. Chibuda, that would seem to be, the heart of the matter. In the recent past, we've had the legislative arm of government, House of Reps to be precise now, uncovering job racketeering in certain ministries. We've also had, the Senate demanding accountability from the Ministry of Interior on why dogs should be fed with more allowance than prison inmates. And, if we go further down to past assemblies, we've had the National Assembly uncovering, corruption in the administration of service-wide vote. Now, if there is a mechanism, guaranteed in legislative executive engagement such that there must be accountability and recommendations made by the legislators on how officials of these ministries, departments, and agencies who are found culpable should receive punitive action. Why do you find that there is less of those recommendations such that there's a feedback mechanism, for Nigerians to know that indeed we're not just hearing these stories, but also there is punitive action for officials of government in the executive arm of government who are culpable?
Well, I think that it's just the character of the big daddy executive system, presidential system of government that we operate, and how people are appointed into office. And then when you are trying to deal with a matter on merit, other considerations tend to be the focus rather than the subject matter of investigation. Some of the oversight activities you highlighted that the National Assembly had made recommendations in the past, the executive simply, in fact, we had situations where the legislature will be investigating a particular issue, and then the executive will set up another committee. Take, for instance, the abandonment of projects of the NDDC that was investigated by the 9th House of Rep. Immediately they finished and turned in their report, the president constituted a forensic audit in the former president, and then paid billions of naira. Until today, we didn't see anything, about that. And that is the reason citizens and the National Assembly must rise to the occasion. The truth is that legislative assertiveness, legislative activism, and class suicide must be needed if we are going to cross the threshold of what we are seeing now. Yes, people will be affected in the legislature because sometimes those who push and show legislative activism are often abandoned politically, and that threatens other people to try to, throw that particular line. But as an institution of government responsible for ensuring compliance with, our laws, ensuring that executive members of government, behave in line with the Constitution, the Appropriation Act, and other extant laws of the Federation. They need that support to be able to take on the executive. The truth is that if the legislature performs optimally, especially on issue of oversight, governance quality will improve in the country. But the Constitution, the way the Section 88 and 89 had been framed, and the fact that we don't have that discipline to, have respect for arms of government who have been charged with responsibility to oversee other people. We are having this kind of, issue. So the legislature had to stand up, for instance, to ensure that those who have not done well in managing the appropriation provision they gave them previously do not get new allocations. For instance, recommendation like you saw last few days, the House of Rep passed a resolution that the MD of the midstream petroleum should be suspended. The president, how has he received that resolution of the House? What action, has been taken? Because the man was caught on tape demarketing one of the biggest manufacturers and entrepreneurs in the country. So these are the kind of respect you give to the legislature, and then they will begin to have the right footing to take on big issues that agencies are dealing with.
So, when there's a failure in government, in any administration, would it be fair for us to blame the legislature?
Well, the answer will be in two parts. One, the legislature has a role depending on what that issue, is, because at the time of formulation, most policies of government, they get approved by the legislature. The budget, for instance, is one of the biggest policy documents of any government. The oversight of the budget, we don't used to have sufficient time for the legislature to oversight the performance of the budget. It's usually, like a rush hour system. Even the passage process usually have, challenges. And the truth is that it does not augur well for the country if the legislature is blackmailed, oppressed, and then you try to rush them into considering important instrument for development just in the name of we are working together. So these are kind of attitude that should change. The legislature has to also resist, not just at the federal level. Thankfully, there's even an incremental progress. It's a near total collapse at the subnational level. So the legislature itself has a blame on one hand that it could also avert. I'll give you an example, and this is why Nigerians must support the legislature to stand and perform its, duties. There was a committee in the House of Rep that discovered that certain monies meant for a particular item was diverted to another, budget line. They called on the agency to make a refund. It is the executive that will ensure that those refunds are made. There was another incident when certain remittances were not done to the Consolidated Revenue Fund account. The House of Rep or the Senate had, passed a resolution, tendered a report saying the communication has gone to the executive. So you don't work in silo. You don't function as if the legislature does not exist just because of how our governance system has been structured. On the other hand, we run, an constitutional democracy where our president has to be elected through a direct election. The president and the governors and the people working with them have made promises to Nigeria, have taken oath of office and to obey and observe the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So they owe a duty of care to citizens to function according to their oath of office. So both arms, including even the judiciary, will share in the blame of any failure of government policy or, government or any administration, yeah.
I would like you to speak further on how the legislature can be truly independent, because to my mind, I'm wondering that the FCT minister, for instance, maybe had presented a budget to the National Assembly of over 1 trillion naira. And if you look at perhaps the line items, I didn't see their budget, my assumption, line items suggesting that 21 billion or so will be used to rebuild or refurbish or whatever name it is of the vice president resident. And I can imagine as a legislator, you see that within the budget as a member of the committee. And within this economy that is crunching, literally we're in dire straits, the legislatures went ahead and approved that budget for such what an economist calls emotionally unintelligent expenditure at a time like this. So how do we make the legislatures, what can CSOs, citizens do to really help the legislators to be truly independent? Because it appears they are not really independent.
Well, you see, budget passage in Nigeria is more of a political process. And, the way government is configured, you have members of the ruling party in the legislature who are in the majority. And the rule, both the constitution, who have prescribed voting method, scrutiny, and other processes for legislative activities, has stated how the legislative process should go and how voting or passage of money bills like budget or any other proposal to the legislature. So where you have a political party that is in the majority, it's likely that the proposals they bring will pass. However, on the issue of whether adequate scrutiny is done on these policy proposals is a question of active citizenship and the understanding of the legislature as being a writing legislature in Nigeria. The truth is that many people, even the executive, they enjoy the fact that whatever proposal they send to the National Assembly, they get it the way they send it. And if the National Assembly try to make adjustment or input, it will be called a pardon or insertions, and a lot of blackmail will go out there. So the legislature in Nigeria, in line with section 80, 81, 82, and 83, is a writing legislature. They have the power of the purse. Whatever the executive is bringing is supposed to be a skeleton or a proposal, an estimate. So they have to now work together to look at what are the constituents saying they are interested in. For instance, in the FCT, what are the constituents, saying? What are their concerns and aspirations? Now, you match it with what is the executive thinking they want to, do for the people. Then this lobby process, and what is required to make that budget to pass is the interaction that happens until that process is. So, but citizens, when they know this is what the FCT minister had proposed, and they begin to do a lot of advocacy, highlighting provisions of that budget, calling on the legislature, Committee on Finance, Committee on Appropriation, and all the leadership of the National Assembly saying, we are concerned about this, we would rather have this. That will help to enhance how legislature can now be able to do better the aspirations of the citizen than just the proposal that the executive wants them to, pass. So that active engagement is very critical.
Well, I wonder how effective that active engagement would be in the light of, the independence that the Constitution confers on the legislators in terms of appropriation, which, has informed the reason for debate over the last few years. If you go back to, the time when the former speaker, when Honorable Yakubu Dogara was Speaker of the House of Representatives, when we had that, issue of budget padding. In relation to that, the last assembly was hugely criticized for, leading the country in the way of fiscal fall because of its approval of the Ways and Means loans under the last administration. But what we're seeing yet again in this administration is its approval, some say even speedy approval of, extra budgetary spending to the tune of about 6.2 trillion naira. And, Jeffrey quoted the monies allocated to the renovation of the VP residence. We could also even talk about the budget allocated to the National Assembly, which many have been criticized for being excessive. Is there any other way besides active engagement, that could compel fiscal responsibility of not just the executive arm of government, but also the legislative arm of government?
So a lot of things will come to play here, right from the leadership recruitment process. If you don't pay attention to the people or the individuals, the internal workings of the party and how people come to the National Assembly, after they had arrived there through various means, it becomes challenging to try to model the behavior outside politics, because we are dealing with the interaction of politics, development, citizens' welfare, and what have you. So in this subject of independence of the legislature, in practicality, it becomes a challenge because we are in a presidential system. You should even have where those kind of challenges are more, pronounced. You are seeing legislators commanding loyalty, for their party, especially the majority party that is in the legislature. Whether it's in America, everywhere, the executive is always pushing. Every presidential candidate is pushing to have a majority in the legislature because they know what that means. But what, as experts were saying is, well, receiving expeditious passage of executive proposals, while it may look fine and sound as if you're giving your president support, there is also an issue about what it does to the institution of the legislature. Because all that is expected is for the rules to be followed. And what is the public asking for? Let there be a robust debate. Every proposal must be adequately scrutinized. And the denial of executive proposal is not necessarily, in quote, amounting to independence of the legislature, except when it's done on the merit of that proposal. So for me, it is critical that we understand how politics interact with the legislative processes and procedure, because these lawmakers came from a party and they want to show their party that they are supporting a proposal from their president and what have you. But we have to do better, because this is, apart from serving your party, you're also serving the nation. And people expect, but I'm just telling you, in reality, the lobby, the interaction that goes on for a particular proposal to pass, there's a lot of political consideration and lobbying that go on behind.
Well, we totally understand. We wish that consideration would be developmental consideration, because at the end of the day, the last assembly not only put us in this trouble we're in with their approvals, they even had to amend the CBN Act, increasing the ways and means that brought us into the quagmire from 5 to 15. There's a lot to be said about that. But one more thing as we begin to wind down, the issue of development commissions, the proliferation of this development commission. The president has just signed another one, the Northwest and Southeast. And the model of development commission is the NDDC. And what has become of the NDDC? With the NDDC, the East-West Road is still an embarrassment. The governor of Bayelsa State, the other day, had to call out the minister. The minister had to go there to some sort of intervene. So, and when you look at the NDDC as a model, for instance, it's been bastardized over the years. So if you look at, say, sections 12, that say you must have an MD and 2 executive directors. NDDC has MD, 3 executive directors. There's no provision for interim administrators. We've had that. There is supposed to be a monitoring committee that looks at the books periodically and reports to the president. We've seen massive corruption in the NDDC. We saw NDDC MDs fainting. We saw all that drama when Akpabio was a member of the House. What came out of it when he, with that investigation of off your mic and all of that? So when you look at the track record of the Model Development Commission, what will be different with all of this new creation?
Well, I have to say, and not trying to sound biased, that actually the Development Commission model is a welcome development for the country. If you look at the Southeast Development Commission that has just been signed, you would discover that since the 1970s, promises were made to the people of the Southeast as to the 3 R's. And none of them, was implemented up to this moment. So this commission is now expected to be dedicated to addressing issue of development within the Southeast. I agree with you that the governance output of the one we have has been problematic. However, that does not mean that we will not have the new ones be able to achieve results. If you look at the 6 geopolitical zones we have, people have been complaining. Why is everything politics, politics, politics? Why 6 geopolitical zones? Why not 6 developmental zones? So that we can focus on our energy on the competitive and comparative advantage of each of these zones. So if we administer the zones properly and efficiently, it will look at the advantage, the resource advantage of that particular zone. We invest in it, and we can say that maybe the Southeast, through this commission, will become the manufacturing and innovation hub of the country. We look at the NDDC, SASA, because there's even a bill on the SASA Development Commission, and they had to step it down for further consultation because the NDDC already covers all the states of the SASA plus 3 other states outside the SASA zone. So the Northwest also having been ravaged by insecurity and other challenges, the commission probably, so this is agitation that you're seeing as a result of the configuration of the country, that resources are not equitably distributed, there's a lot of inequality, so that struggle for regionalism. So this is like an indirect regionalism that is development-centric rather than political-centric. But I agree that the monitoring committee, the governance structure must deviate from the political norm and focus on providing grassroots, rural, and standard development opportunities for the people. And the funds dedicated there are not used to do political settlement, but for development of each of these zones, which are actually regions, in quote.
And the Southeast Development Commission also comes with implication in terms of extra financial appropriation, payment of personnel. And, we could go on and on about the arguments, but it's an ongoing conversation. But I will want to thank you very much for your time on the program. Mr. Chibuzo Okereke is a legislative governance expert and policy analyst. Thank you very much for your time on the program.
Thank you.
And from here, we switch gears to yet another important conversation. What are the effects of excessive screen time on your mental health and your family? Stay with us. We'll be right back with that.
All right, welcome back. It's now time to talk social media, but this time we're talking addiction of social media. And so it feels like a lot of us are in that WhatsApp group, as we say it in Nigeria, meaning that a lot of people are guilty. But the doctor is here to help us separate what an addiction is and what it is not, as far as social media is concerned. We're being joined by Dr. Bonjubola Abiri, consultant, psychiatrist, managerial psychologist, and CEO of Ready-Made Consulting Services. Doctor, we meet again.
Yes, we do. Thank you
We're
very
all
much.
in this WhatsApp group.
We are. To be honest, we all are.
So help us unpack. So addiction is a strong word.
Yes, it
and
is.
I know doctors don't use words lightly. So let's be able to separate what just being addicted and just loving social media means, so that we can know how to appropriate time to these, devices that are taking a lot of our time.
All right, then. So thank you very much for having me and for the question. And so more often than not, like you rightly said, professionals don't throw words out just like that. And so even in our field of work, what we find is that we're not using the term addiction a lot because it's derogatory, it's demeaning to people, especially because, addiction was always linked to drug addiction. And so the term to use most times these days is dependence. But even that shows you that there's an uncontrollable urge to use the social media. And so while social media is something that we've all gotten used to, using it every day, scrolling on our phones, on our tabs, on our devices, when there's an uncontrollable urge to use, there's a problematic use of social media, such that it affects an individual's quality of life, interactions with people around them, the work that they're supposed to do or their academics, and they find that they continue to go back to that act. So, for instance, some people will tell you, oh, I've deleted all the apps on my phone because, I've lost control. But after a while, what happens? They go back and they start to use. Then, of course, we've also found that people who are addicted or dependent also have physical and psychological effects, emotional effects. When they don't use, they feel sad, they feel overwhelmed, they feel like they're in despair. And there's this compulsive need to just use the social media. And so when we see that, people have, again, a compulsive urge, problematic use around it, and an inability to control their frame of mind, themselves around social media, we can actually go on to say that these individuals are social media addicted.
So, Doc, from what you're saying, there's a difference between dependence and addiction. And let me put this in context. There was a time when we didn't have mobile phones. What we had were the old landlines,
yes.
And not all Nigerians, had it. It was the exclusive preserve of the very rich elite in the country.
Yes.
And now when we have these devices and, it's stolen, we can't rest. Yeah. We can't sleep until we have that device back. Is it an addiction or dependence?
All right, so the thin line between an addiction and dependence is that there's problematic use. Problematic use that affects the individual's quality of life, that affects the individual's interactions, that affects the individual's, functioning in relationships, functioning at work, or functioning with academics. And so what, connotes a difference between both of them is the fact that there's a problematic use. And that problematic use often comes with, certain criteria that we say. There's a compulsive urge to use. The individual cannot control themselves around it. When the individual is not using, there's something that is called, there's just this continual desire to want to use, there's this salience, I'm continually looking for it. Then, of course, there's the fact that when the individual comes into contact with social media, they're unable to control themselves. You tell yourself, oh, I just want to check one thing on social media, and then 2 hours later, you're still on social media streets. And then, of course, when it then starts to cause interpersonal problems between you, family, your bosses at work, you neglect all the work that you're supposed to do, and you're sitting on social media. Of course, what we see is that there's a big, big problem with addiction.
Sorry, Jeffrey, let me just come in here. Like, cigarettes have nicotine, yes. And, some other drugs have some addictive content in them. Is there something in our devices that is, that carries an addictive content?
So I'm very happy that you asked that question, and I'm happy that you're laughing. If you do a research, and a lot of research has shown that social media addiction is the addiction of the future. Now, what happens in addictions is it's not necessarily the substance that is used. It might just be the activity. Now, there's a part of the brain that is called the reward center. And we know that the brain is filled with neurons, and there's a lot of neuronal activity going on there. And so as humans, even when the most basic things that we like are presented to us, so if you're hungry and someone gives you food, what do you feel? A sense of relief, excitement. What happens in the brain is that a significant neurotransmitter, dopamine, there's a dopamine rush. And so, like I said, it's not only in terms of a drug. it can be an activity. And so we've seen it with food, we've seen it with sex, we've seen it with internet, we've seen it with gambling, we've seen it with pornography. And so yes, what drugs do to the brain is what the internet is starting to do to the brain. And so, you know, when you see the likes, the retweets, the mentions, think about how it makes you feel as an individual. You just feel on top of the world. Somebody sees me, somebody hears me. I feel validated by someone, even though you are behind the screen. So social media addiction is likened to drug addiction because of the neural processes that go on in the brain and the release of that neurotransmitter, the dopamine rush.
So are we all technically unwell?
I like that you put it very tidily. And, you know, to be honest, while there are a couple of people who may have the social media addiction or the dependence or problematic internet use, there are actually some people who are tidy around the internet. They're able to do what they need to do. Some people are not even on any social media platforms, and I know people like that. But the average Nigerian or the average world person, if you ask, you'd hear that people are on at least between 5 to 8 or even more social media platforms. And so there's an increased tendency towards technical unwellness if we do not start to put measures and processes in place to identify that we can be at risk of a problem and start to checkmate, you know, the things that we do. I mean, look at it, from children to adolescents to adults to even old people. All of us are struggling with social media use.
You know, and I like Jeffrey's question, because some studies say that addiction are, you know, are manifestations of certain underlying causes like loneliness, depression, anxiety. But some of us are not lonely, we're not depressed, we're not anxious, but we also have, you know, that urge to keep returning to social media. So that difference, does it cure us? Does it make us, you know, healthier than those who go there because of those underlying issues?
So what drives people to use social media is different. Your personality, your personal preferences, your lifestyle, and your productivity. Some people use it for work, and we understand why they need to be on social media a lot. But if you get to that point where you have a problem, you know, monitoring your own use, controlling yourself around it, it's easy to say that you're not going there because you're not lonely. How do you know you're not lonely? How do you know you're not depressed? How do you know that you're not looking for it for validation or self-esteem? A lot of people are not even self-aware enough to be able to identify that this is why I keep going back to social media. And so you need to understand why you go back to social media, why you need to use social media. It would interest you to know that, you know, the recommended daily allowance that you should actually use around social media as an adult is 3 hours per day. Many of us are lost for hours online. We don't cook. Some people don't cook for children. Some people also give, you know, children devices and say that, you know what, just take this, let me also be able to rest and do my own thing. So when you see that you are unable to function, you have, you know, deadlines that you're supposed to get to, you never get to them because you're on social media, or you're on social media and you're constantly comparing yourself to other people. You're looking at the lives of other people, wishing that, you know, I could be this, I could be that. Those could actually be your own, you know, drivers or fuelers of being on social media. So you need to always ask yourself, why am I on social media?
So why does lack of productivity, why is it so attractive? Is that a question that experts like you have considered? Because it looks like, oh, there's no rigorous scholarship here, so I just want to look at somebody's picture. This, why is it? Because that is the other side of our question.
Yes.
You have an answer for us?
Well, the lack of productivity as to why Nigerians keep going back, or why people keep going back.
Keep going back.
Well, so again, it feels a need. There's a void that many people have. Like I said earlier, a lot of people want to be seen, to be heard, to be liked. Even in real life, when you're having conversations with people, we find that 40% of the time you're talking about yourself. On social media, with very minimal effort, you can put out a picture and hope that, well, maybe 2 hours later when I come back, a number of people would have liked it, retweeted it, commented. There's something that it does to the individual psyche. It boosts self-esteem. It boosts morale. It you know, livens the mood. It makes people feel, again, like what a drug will do to an individual. And when dopamine is in the body, imagine how you feel when you are excited, when you're ecstatic, when you're very happy. That is what social media does to you, especially with very, very minimal effort.
So there's something I want you to help us out. I'm a visual learner. So for visual learners like us who would like to see a lot, look, I go to social media because I'm a journalist and I don't post that much. I'm a lazy person when it comes to social media. I just go there to look at a lot of things. So how do you separate that from having this dependence issue?
Control. Power is nothing without control. If you're able to go in, do exactly what it is that you've highlighted that you want to do, fantastic. But you know how social media works, and I think that people also need to start learning that, you see, behind a lot of these things, there's a lot of psychological work that has gone on. What will people like? What will drag them? What will make them come back? In fact, there are these lovely cartoons that show people using social media, but their hands are chained. And so every time they use, they keep going deeper. They can't stop. So if you can control yourself around social media, you have a definitive timeline, you say that this is what I want to do, you're not perturbed as to whether or not someone likes your picture or doesn't like your picture, or is not asking you when you posted last, you're not perturbed about when, you know, notifications come up. Some people, you should see them around social media. I once met a young lady who told me, if by the time she posts a picture and 1 hour later, 100 people haven't liked it, she would delete it because she feels like she's not good enough.
Oh dear.
Yes. Is that not an addiction already?
Of course it is. It's a dependence. And a lot of her self-esteem and self-worth is tied to the fact that, do people validate me or do not validate me? And so for you, if you're able to go on, do what it says that you've highlighted that you want to do, achieve it, and you leave. You're a cool user. But unfortunately, for other people...
Not totally that cool. Look, we do hardcore work on television as journalists. So I'm guilty of TikTok because TikTok just makes me laugh. Bukola, maybe your question. It's not me.
Oh, well, you're making me think a whole lot this morning. And I like what you said about asking yourself about why you return to social media over and over again, and why you post, why you seek likes and validation. And it may not necessarily be because you're not lonely, even if you're not addicted.
Yes.
You know, brilliant. So that compels me. If we're not asking those questions, yes, and we're all doomed, quote and unquote, I hope not. What are the long-term effects?
All right. So I'll leave this thought with all of us. There's this movie, The Social Dilemma, which x-rays the detrimental effects of social media. And so what it did was that it sat with a number of psychologists and a number of top people, you know, that worked in many of these social media sites. And what you find is that many of them protect themselves and their children from actually even using many of these things. And so what are the long-term benefits? The long-term benefits are different for different social demographics. For children, it's different. For adults, it's different. For adolescents, it's also very different. Physical effects can happen. So for instance, there's the neck strain that happens because people continue to bend their necks and continue to use. There's what we call the carpal tunnel syndrome, where some people develop, you know, pain in their wrist because they're continually, you know, chatting and scrolling and all of that. There's also what is known as, of course, the doom scrolling. People keep looking for negative news. What else is negative? What else is negative? What else can I get here? There's poor sleep. There's poor appetite. There are body image issues because people are constantly, comparing themselves to perfectly shaped models, quote and unquote, on social media. And there's really nothing like that. For the mental health, impact, depression, anxiety, self-esteem issues. And what we're beginning to find these days is that a lot of adolescents are tending towards suicide because as, they compare themselves to others, they're not, they don't feel good enough about themselves. They're thinking, what's the worst that can happen? Let me just take my life. Of course, you also want to look at things like cyber stalking, cyberbullying, cyber crimes, pornography. All of that is on the rise as people continue to, expose themselves to the dangers of social media.
So you are the doc. How do you, discipline yourself?
Well, so I'll be honest, like, Jeffrey had said earlier on, we're all struggling. And so the first thing that we need to do is to admit that we're struggling or to identify that we can be at risk of a struggle, depending on how we interact with and use social media. Once you've identified that there's a problem, try to control yourself. If you can control yourself and say, okay, well, I'm going to the supermarket, I'll just leave my phone at home. You can go, around places, discipline yourself and not take your phone around. Or you can tell yourself at certain times of the day will only be the time that I'll use my social media. And you are successful at it, then you're doing well. Then there's something that researchers have said, that try to avoid your phone within the first hour of waking up and the last hour of going to sleep. More often than not, most people are, I wake up, and while they're thinking, I should pray, I should do, no, the first thing is, who has liked my picture? What's new on social media? And so people need to be able to control themselves around social media. When you've done that, turn off notifications. For me, notifications, they frazzle me, they make me on the edge. So I've turned it off. I will come to it when I can come to it. Manage your energy around social media. At the top of the hour, is it when I want to check? Is it every 3 hours? What exactly am I doing on social media? Is it productive work or is it just Is it for gossip? And then, of course, at the end of the day, if you find that you are still struggling, you might actually, like an individual who needs help for drug addiction, need to seek professional mental health care for social media addiction.
So I know you just gave a generic, solution, but let's break it down to different groups.
Yeah.
Let's talk about man and wife. So you see a situation where people go for dates, they are still with their phones. They go to bed, you're supposed to be gisting with your wife or your husband, you're with your phone.
Yeah.
How do they come around this? Now, give you an example. So some people do business online.
Yeah.
Some don't do business. So I want you to aggregate all of these variables for man and wife. We're going to go in phases. Okay. So let's take man and wife first.
All right. I think it would be nice to start with children.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so for children, any child less than 2 should have 0 hours on screen time.
0?
Yes. That's WHO recommendation.
Wow.
Yes. Between 3 and 5, you can give a child 1 hour screen time. And anything above that, within the adolescent years, children and adolescents shouldn't have more than 3 hours of screen time. When you then come to the adults, we should be able to know when work is work and when work ends. So even if you say that you're doing maybe the change business online, you also need to put restrictions in place. If you have a situation, and we do have those situations where people go out for dinner, they say they're watching a movie, and half the time we're, scrolling or chatting with someone else, and, the other partner is looking at you and saying, and you say, this message has to go. Even when people are driving on major roads, major highways, you see them either, scrolling or saying something. It can't wait. It can wait. Because, of course, dangerous accidents can happen. And so for when people need to go to bed, it's difficult, but you can put your phone in another room. There was a life before social media. And so I think that, again, power is nothing without control. If we keep giving our power away to social media, then social media is in charge of us. But if we, sit down, and every family should individualize and discuss what they think works best for them. A lot of marriages and relationships have broken down because people could not control themselves. They became impulsive around the use of social media. And so it's important, like I rightly said, every family should identify. There's some families that when it's dinner time, when it's meal times, it's bonding time, keep away your phones. When there's specific times or we're going out as a family, we're going to keep away our phones. And even the parents know that. We know that children also learn by watching. And so a lot of parents these days are complaining, my children don't read books. Your children can't read books because they don't see you reading books. What they see you doing half the time is you're with a device. And so since they have devices, and you'll be surprised, most children they have a phone, they have a tab, they have a PlayStation, they have a Nintendo, they have TV, they have Netflix. And when, the power holding takes lights for just 5 minutes, what are those children saying? Mommy, I'm bored. It's a big problem.
Yeah, so just a follow-up to that question, because monetization of some of these things have actually made people go on overdrive, which I want you to address, because if not that way on TV, I would have used a worse word. The level of senselessness we see on social media, there's no way to explain that this person is not just clickbaiting.
Yeah.
So how do we get ourselves, this is for adolescents. I'm an adult, so I may be able to make a decision for myself. But adolescents, they're still developing.
Yeah.
They're still finding their way around. So validation is key to them.
Yeah.
I want you to speak to that as well.
I think it's particularly painful for children and adolescents because their brains are still developing. Their brains are still wiring. It's the reason why you can see that as an adult, you can take certain decisions. But that's also because you are self-aware and you can self-regulate. And so that responsibility falls back to us as adults. You will have tough decisions with your children, especially because many of us have left them on the reins of do what you want. It's the holidays, you can sleep at whatever. Sometimes you wake up and you find children awake at 2 a.m. They have their tabs open, they have their laptops open, they have almost 5 things.
And they're not doing Forex.
And they're not doing Forex. They're not bringing money home. They're using the electricity. Interestingly, when I used to have some of these conversations with my children, sometimes I say, it's because there's light. It's because there's internet. In those days, by 9, we went to bed. And so while there are pleasures of life that are supposed to make life easier for us as parents, we must stand in the gap for our children. And we must, of course, be the ones that show the template, make them understand, because the children now are not like the children that we were. These ones will ask you questions. They would ask you why. Why? Why do you want me to do this? And so help them understand that while everyone else might be doing it, it's like when my daughter says, Mom, I want a phone. And I'm like, why do you want a phone? She goes, everybody in my class has a phone. That's not a good enough reason to want a phone. You want to be able to communicate with me? We will find other ways to communicate. And so every family should individualize. But every family should also be very, very aware of the dangers, because there are a lot of dangers. And so at the end of the line, I sit down and I'm seeing children who are dealing, 8, 7, adolescents who are dealing with pornography. And they've been doing it for years before their parents found out. Some are already gambling. Of course, they know their ways around all these areas. They have friends online, They're chatting with adults online. In other countries, we've heard of teenagers and sometimes children even getting killed by people that baited them out of their homes. So as adults, we need to take that responsibility on behalf of our children, make them understand, especially because the period of adolescence is also a time when adolescents struggle with self-esteem, self-worth, and self-perception. Help them understand that, yes, there's a lot of this out there, but until you find your own self-worth, until you understand who you are, until you love who you are, regardless of what the world standards are, you will struggle.
Doc, you just may have peeped into my notes, with this last bit of commentary, but I also like you to speak partly to some of the issues as well. The data reporter that we quoted at the beginning of the program says actually that there are over 100 million internet users in Nigeria. But of that number, it's just a meager 36.2 million that are active internet users. So I wonder if, this is a problem manufactured by more money that we have had. And I say this for good reason. Prior to this time, when we now have our devices that we are so addicted to, I grew up on reading Famous Five, Secret Seven, all those enlightening books, in primary school. And in secondary school, I graduated to M&B and Temptations, all those romance novels. So we used to do a lot of reading, but we now have e-books. So I want you to speak first on the first hand to if this is a problem manufactured by more money that we have on our hands, and how we can cure ourselves, or because it's also affecting the reading culture.
Definitely.
How we can return to the reading culture that we had with physical books that carried intimacy, and this disconnect that we now have with e-books.
All right, so beyond more money, of course, there's technological advancement, there's innovation, and there's also that drive to want to be like the Joneses. So you heard that quite a number of people buy phones for their children because they don't want their children to be left behind with what is going on in the world. I'm old school. And so I'm likely to say that I will buy hard books because I want to, scribble on them. And I do the same for my children. Unfortunately, and somehow fortunately, for many people, like ebooks, the ease of, being able to carry so many books and being able to reference them, at a certain time. But it's also very important to also remember that, some schools are also giving assignments, which is a major problem. Yeah. Your child tells you, Mommy, I'm doing my assignment, but by the time you come in, you say,
Summer school.
So you have so many pages open and the child is, very, very distracted. Again, we can't stop what technological advancements will do, but we can be aware of what the advantages and disadvantages will be. Right. And we can also be aware of what we can plug in and get from. So again, it's discipline, it's control, it's being aware, it's being informed, and it's being able to take the best decisions for yourself and for your family as you go on.
All right, Doc, 30 seconds if you can help me answer this. Not a social media question, but since you're a psychologist, are we overeducating children? The other day I was driving, and so children waking up by 6 a.m., going to school, they'll not be back till 4. When I went to school, it was 2 o'clock, you're back. And then they do all of that 5 days a week, and then holidays, they are now saying do summer school and all of that. We are overeducating. 30 seconds, my producer is for me to go.
So to be honest, the pressure on children these days is extreme. A few weeks ago, I saw a child who came in because of the pressure of schoolwork. And so, yes, it's not like it was in those days. It may not be overeducating at the end of the day, but there's a lot of pressure on children to perform. And children are breaking down. Okay,
I've just been told that we're going to bring you back on this matter. But I must thank you, Dr. Bonjubola Abiri, consultant psychiatrist, managerial psychologist, CEO, Ready-Made Consulting Services. Thank you so much, as always, for coming through for us.
Thank you very much for having me.
And now we'll take that break. And when we come back, Omobaba #1 is our guest. Join us again.
right now I'm just awed, and for good reason. I'm not just awed, my ribs have been cracked, and you're in for an exciting time on this segment as we welcome Omobaba. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good morning.
That was over 20 years ago.
Yes, please.
You're an OGO.
No.
You must be approaching your
Gen
50s, though.
You wish. I'm Gen Z.
You wish.
I mean, all thanks to God. I mean, support of my friends, my family, and fans. It's not so. We still have Alibaba being active in the game.
Alibaba is the grandfather of comedy.
He's still active. Don't retire. Very active.
Okay, so Omobaba, let's start from where we just left off from.
Okay.
We're talking about social media, and I know that you were part of the conversation.
Yeah.
But you are guilty. You are one of those who provide those content that make us keep going back to our social media, our phone devices.
Yeah. I mean, the problem, we didn't hit the problem, the nail on the head concerning the problem. It became very cumbersome when people realized they can make money off social media. So even the person that know how to get the money and those that don't know how to get the money, everybody is there. And now there's no control. Everybody feels anything goes. Nothing is being stopped. For China's TV, there are things you will never show on TV, but people are controlling their stations and they are showing everything to the world because money is attached to it. So a lot of people find the need to always be there. Doing what is not controlled. Now, that's the case. There are some pages you go to, there are some handles you go to, and you get educated. But there are some you go to, education is far from what they are doing. Even in comedy, stand-up, for instance, stand-up is an elite art. It's not for everybody, but because you have to bring it down to the level of the particular set of audience or people you are performing to. So you can come down to their level or you take it as far. But on social media, when it comes to shooting skits and the rest, it's not 100% control. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of, people looking for validation, like the doctor rightly said. So for me, I think because there is money attached to it, and these are people that, there's nothing I'm doing. Let me get on this. Let me make money, and everybody's out there.
An important issues that you have raised there that all of us should reflect on and help inform our choices when we're, feasting on social media. But for the content creator, for those of us, we're addicted to some of your content. But for the content creator, I wonder if, there are mental health issues there for you. Do you find yourself addictive, going back to watch other content?
So I'm not from the era of social media. It was cumbersome for us to get the attention. I was staying far away in Abulegba. The hub of entertainment was in Surulere. The best way you can get any information is through poster. So now tell me, who is going to paste poster from Surulere all the way to Abulegba for me to see that there's something happening? Maybe radio, maybe TV, but for you to become a stand-up comedian, then it has to be around Surulere. Then OJ's nightclub. At the National Stadium, there's OJ's in Yaba as well. But now it is an avenue for people to just get information in good time. So for then, you can't easily get the attention. You get scrutinized. You have to prove to the world that you are good at what you are doing. And there are some people that immediately they are in control. They know that you cannot cross to the next level. So it's not as if they are hunting you or they don't want you to grow, but they just know that you are not ready. But with the advent of social media, whether you are ready or not ready, your mistake can make you, and now you are under pressure to deliver. So what are you churning out there for your audience to see? It's not a personal decision. That's why education is very important. Exposure is very important. There are some, as a stand-up comedian, there are things I never say. There are lines I will never cross. Based on my upbringing and how I decide on my own to, for people to see me. I can be the guy, I can be that noisy guy, even on social media, but I choose not to be. It is my personal decision. I can be anything I want to be on social media, but that is my personal decision. So the problem is not the people consuming the content. The problem might now be those dishing out the content. What do you want to put out for people to see? That's just the problem.
All right, we're going to go forward and go backward. So, sometimes being on in the creative space for a long time on radio before I came on TV, I came to realize that, just like you said, some people may argue that comedy is not an elite art.
Yeah.
But if you look critically, it takes a lot of intelligence to be a comedian. At the end of the day, I'm not just talking about wishy-washy. As far as Ukraine, for instance, is being run by somebody who was a comedian. Now he's the president of that particular country. So do you feel that sometimes, because of the art form you chose, this is comedy, you're underestimated, underrated in terms of your intellectual prowess?
Yes, a lot of times. People don't know how deep, how vast you can be just because you are making them laugh. Until they have a one-on-one encounter with you, until they have a sit-out with you and they pick your brains, How do I explain to people that have been part of some projects, like writing pitch, of dishing out pitch for advertising agency for them to go and present for their clients? How do I explain to you that I do that as a stand-up? How do I tell you that as a stand-up, some of your big songs, I have my input in it? How do I tell you that? So you just, and it's a problem in this part of the world that people hardly want to see you cross from what they used to know you to be to another thing. It's a big problem. So how do you explain all that? How do you explain to people that you're part of solution to many problems that people don't even know you're part of? I mean, how do I tell you that there are some comedians, which I'm aware, that some of the governors of the states approach to solve problems of the states? How do I tell you that? People don't believe. So, I mean, it's just the way you perceive people that you, and I'm brought up in such a way that I don't look down on you. I don't judge you by what you're wearing or what you look like. I don't even want to judge you, but I just want to know that we are on the same page. I mean, if you are not up to par, I can tell you that, okay, why not, let's try it like this. I don't want you to feel less of yourself. I mean, the way stand-up is concerned, you need a mentor, not to copy your mentor, but for the person to encourage you to be better. And in that field, because I don't mention it, I mean, the next generation of comedians, if you pick 10, 8 will point at me.
Amazing, Omobaba. Speaking of which, I looked you up and you studied industrial relations, I believe.
And personal
management. And you're the son of a pastor.
No, elder.
So those two are totally unrelated to comedy. What have they got to do with comedy?
So I started off with, doing one-man drama in church, singing. I used to own a band. Some of your favorite, like 2 of them, now they used to be my drummer, my keyboardist then. It was, trying to get, I really wanted to do music and sports. So I feel if I'm not going to play basketball, I knew what I was doing from a very tender age, and people find this very funny, that at the time I was in JSS3, I knew that if I'm in art class, it will relate with what I want to do. But I don't want to study theater art because it will limit me in my own thinking. Not that everybody that studied theater art, they are not supposed to. I just feel it will limit me in my thinking because I always want to have a plan B. If this thing no work, if this was supposed to work, I mean, this is a talent given by God, nurtured by parents, by friends, by family and fans. I can improve on it on my own, walk up to people to get training, side training. That can happen. However, you can't have side training in industrial relations and personnel management. You have to end that by going to school. So I don't want to be in school and I'm doing theater art. But however, a lot of people think I was in theater art. You know, I'm always with you. Steve, or no. So a lot of people
What
think
school was that?
Lagos State. So a lot of people feel I'm in theater art. However, I'm not in theater art. I'm studying industrial relations and personnel management. So those two together really don't determine who you are as a person. It's just the path that God wants you to go through. You might have your own plan and God has another plan for you. So while I was doing music, I have 10-man, 14-man band. That's why I respect every musician that plays with a band. They are doing so well. It's not easy. You are managing people. It's like running a company. When you want everybody to pay up, and one person is giving you excuse. So while I was doing that, I discovered that it was cumbersome for me to really put things together at that age. Then before my band was set up, I would tell 1 or 2 stories and people will laugh. So after that, somebody walked up to me and said, we want you and your band. And I said, for the first time, I just said, let me even mention a fee. Maybe this person will. The person said, no, don't worry about the band. Only you. Just come and tell us this story. So I went to the church. I did just that. And that was the beginning.
That was the beginning of comedy. Okay. I said we'll go to the future and go to the past.
Right,
so when they talk about, now we even have a Ministry of Culture, Creative Industry and all of that. When the movie makers go there, they're asking for money for their projects, and maybe when the musicians go, I don't know what they ask for, where there's money for music. So for comedians, how challenging is it for you to get like credit facility, and what are the kinds of infrastructure you need to be able to, because abroad we have promoters who organize all the shows and centers and venues and all of that. But for the Nigerian comedian, what exactly would you think you need as a comedian in terms of the support from government to be able to explore as much as you want?
Okay, so I do tell people this always, that in the comedy industry, we started from here and we moved all the way here, not realizing that we need to balance it at the middle. And that's why you must have experienced it once in a while. People have bad days, but you will be somewhere and you will hear some of the comedians speak, and you go, why did he have to say that? He didn't know that. You know, you feel a certain way. It is because we came from here and we went all the way here. What is needed to be done for the stand-up industry is we have a space problem, up problem. What do I mean by up problem? We need comedy clubs. Around this area, there should be one. Owned by comedians. Owned by people that knows how to run the business. Then how do you get that? You need a building, you need furnitures, and this costs a lot of money. So that's why you see comedians partnering with lounge bars and to make this happen. If you have enough comedy clubs, these are our requests. You go there, you request for things like this. It's a very wide industry, a very big industry. As a comedian, we are employers of labor. You have a show, you have bouncers. You have a show, you have caterers. You have a show, you have ushers. You have a show, you have cameramen, lights, sound, screen. And this costs so much money. And if you check it, it's being run by just the comedian, no support. Majorly no support. Maybe few sponsors, corporate sponsors here and there. But if the government is giving grants to film producers, they can easily come and say, I want to buy this camera, I want to pay this actor. But when they see a comedian, they just feel, oh, he's the only one standing. Yeah, the only one coming. Sometimes when my team charge my clients, they go, are you bringing all the speaker? Are you bringing, because that aspect we need attention on that aspect, which is government coming in to support us with grants. That is for people that need it. For me, I've been running comedy club for so many years, and I can tell you it's quite challenging to always shift from one venue to another. But what if we say in Ikeja, for instance, we have 5 comedy clubs. on the island we have 10 or 15. I mean, it should not be self-owned. If you support like 20 comedians in the country, that's enough. 30 comedians is enough because they will bring out people. Without the support of government, we are seeing new guys coming up. No, they didn't just, it's not just that they have talent. There's no comedian in Nigeria that will say, I started alone without the support of another comedian. No. Let that person come out, and I will link you to one person that the first day I saw you, or the first day we allowed you to come on stage to perform, it was this man that said, come on stage. You know, people find it hard to say, oh, I was helped, I was supported by this set of people. I can never write my story leaving out the likes of Alibaba, Gbenga Adeyinka, Basketball, TA, Teju, and the rest. You know, we might be contemporary in the game with some of them because of location. You can just, I might be in the same space with you, same IQ with you, but you have the opportunity to meet Alibaba before me. And you are the one that introduced me to the man, and the man said, come on stage, showcase your talent. In my era, you cannot say you're a comedian if you have not been to Lagbaja's motherland's space to perform. It was our hub. It was a go-to place for comedians. And that's a support to the industry. No, I hardly hear his name in the scheme of things.
Yeah,
you cannot mention the success of comedians in Nigeria and not mentioning people like Oprah Williams.
Exactly.
These are the people you might not get 100% or good royalty from what you've done in the past. But I mean, these are people that stick in their head without government support to run things like this.
90,000 laughs.
Yeah, and kudos to those guys who were able to stand, and you are, you know, one of the big names in the comedy industry today. And you have, you know, a club to your credit on Not Your Tie.
Oh, Not Your Tie.
So speaking of which, what's happening with On Not Your Tie? Are you coming with a show anytime soon? And maybe you can just drop one or two jokes for us as well. Let's lighten things up a bit.
So I quickly need to ask this. You say I should drop one or two jokes. If you have Anthony Joshua here, what will you tell him?
One or two blows.
Maybe I'll give you one or two blows.
I'll bring the boxing bag for him.
So I had this experience. I was traveling to London. So when I got to Heathrow, the immigration officer, it was being funny. It was early in the morning. So he looked at me and said, oh, what do you do for a living? I told him, I make people laugh for a living. I'm a comedian. And I said, oh, okay, it won't be bad. Let me hear some jokes. I said, I don't joke with my jokes. You know. So On Not Your Tie is a comedy club. The essence is I decided one day with my team, we sat down, and I said, okay, most times we get bookings weekend, let's say from Friday, Saturday, Sundays. That what do I do with my Mondays to Thursday? That I want to run something. The plan A is not what I'm running now. This is the plan B. So I won't mention the plan A because we are in a country where, or in a nation where plagiarism is not taken seriously. And that's a big problem in the sector. So the plan B is, okay, when people come from work, when they are done with work, with the stress, they go home. They meet their first son, maybe they are stressed by their boss, and the guy came running to, Daddy, and you are angry with him for no reason. Why not take a little time out that, you know, the pressure of traffic and all that, sit somewhere with your colleagues, with your friends, laugh, then go home happy. Not too late. It's targeted at working class, not people that will go and start making up 9 o'clock. They want to come out for comedy club. No, that's not the kind of comedy club I run. I want you to come from work. That's why it's called On Not Your Tie. You know, come from work and sit and laugh and to discover younger talent. I don't want Omobaba's name to be mentioned in 20 years, 30 years ago. Oh, I know him. No, let people be the one to say, I got my act right. With this person on this stage because he encouraged us to do stand-up. So that's why there's On Not Your Tie, and it's a comedy club. There's need for comedy clubs. There's need for young comedians to know that it is not to be at the big shows first. go to comedy clubs, go to different ones. You have a lot. You have a life lounge with Bush and Basket Mouth. You have Not Your Tie with Omobaba. Usually it was run by Omobaba, Koja, SLK, D1. You can, SLK has his own now. D1 has his own comedy club. There is, I think Acapella is running one.
Is it the D1 we always see on Instablog?
The same D1. The same D1 is a very funny stand-up comedian.
All right. But totally out of time. Enjoying this conversation, but totally out of time, Bukola.
Well, we want to thank you very much. Totally out of time indeed. I was going to come with another question.
For my joke. but you know what is trending now? You know what is trending?
Protest.
Yes, there's going to be. They said there will be protests. There's inflation in food prices. There's fuel is not as easy as it used to be. Everybody is a singer now. It's either you are in Band A, Band B, or Band C. You know, all these things going on. And guess our response?
Thank you so much, comedian. Afrobeat gospel singer, many don't know that about you.
Many don't know.
Comic actor Olufemi Fagade Omobaba. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me,
I wish
guys.
you all the best. Yeah.
Same here. Thank you.
And we're nearly reaching the home stretch now. We'll be back again tomorrow with the last beat before the weekend. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Bukola Koka.
Sunrise Daily is up next at the top of the hour. Thank you for watching. I'm Jeffrey Uzongo.